Hey, 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 everybody. It's a cloudy Tuesday. Yes, that's right. I said it. It's a Tuesday, not a Wednesday. And yes, it is episode 32 of the Real Deal Pod with Allister and Geoff. The reason why we're here on a Tuesday is our big bad boy Geoff is off and running to New York tomorrow. He's going to rub shoulders with the rich and famous like he always does. One of the most famous people I know. This guy knows tons of people with money. My God, I wish I could just run in his circles for a couple of days. Geoff, my man, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I'm like rubbing shoulders with the rich and famous.
Yeah,
Like,
man.
wow.
You're off to New York,
Like,
man. Manhattan.
I
Broadway.
think the most famous person I have ever met was actually Anthony Robbins in Langley, British Columbia. And he married a lady that was from Langley that used to work for me when I had clothing stores. And this giant of a man came into Willowbrook Mall in Langley, and I was like, "That's Anthony Robbins."
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
and that's Bonnie. I think her name now is Sage. That used to work for me. What's going on here? So that's the most famous person I ever met. Got to shake his hand, and it was maybe a 3 minute introduction. So outside of that, my next most famous person is Allister Carrington. So
Nah, come
there you
on
go.
now. My wife knows more, even more famous people. She was actually she was babysat when she was young by Jason Priestley.
Come on, really?
Seriously, yeah, because he grew up in Ladner, and that's where she grew up. Yeah, she was babysat by Jason Priestley. Crazy, crazy,
Beverly
crazy.
90210.
Beverly Hills 90210. I'm ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say I loved that show. I actually still could watch the reruns.
You know what? I can happily say that I never watched that show.
Oh man, you're missing out, buddy.
Um, but
Brenda,
speaking of
Brandon.
shows, I just have been binge watching Game of Thrones.
Okay,
And one night I stayed up until 4 o'clock in the morning binge watching that.
that's
Oh my,
crazy.
like what are you thinking? So anybody that wants to get into uh, uh, a show, that Game of Thrones is captivating.
That's awesome. I heard of it. That's one haven't gotten into yet. That show I know. That's one of the ones that everybody's told me you got to get into. You got to see that one. I
Well,
got it. But that to your point, I gotta be able to dedicate that time, and I can't dedicate till 4 in the morning to stay up and watch it. Kids will be up, waking me up to do things. Well,
you
that
got
is
to
the
keep in
want the
mind,
TV.
you got to keep in mind, Alistair, I get up at 5:30 in the morning every
That's what
day.
I do. That's what I'm saying. I get up at 5:30 in the morning, so I can't go off of an hour and a half sleep, man.
Well,
That's amazing.
that's what I mean. That's how captivating it is. But
Right?
anyways,
That's
let's
awesome.
let's get going.
Let's get into her. So, man, good thing we're actually doing this today, because we got a big day tomorrow. It's rate announcement day. And I have been reading the craziest amount of stuff, man, like just wild. And I know like we talked about it last pod. I think we talked about because the inflation numbers came out, it dropped to 1.6, right? And you had mentioned when was it the last time we were that low is what?
I believe the year was 2021,
Right.
and when our inflation rate was at 1.6% at that time, our prime rate was at 2.45.
Yeah.
And today, our the most recent report is a 1.6% inflation rate, and our prime rate is at 6.45. So
Right.
again, I know you're going to jump into this. What does that look like for tomorrow's Bank of Canada meeting?
Right. Well, and that's, I think, the biggest thing to watch out for because, so going to your point of if we were at 2.45, that was what they were saying with those inflation numbers being at 1.6 is that the goal, they have to get it to 2, right? So now they have to increase. They have to get it. We have to raise our inflation. So the only way for that to happen again is to get us spending. So one of the articles that I read was saying they had to get our drop our numbers down by 2 to 2.5%. So that brought on again the conversation of It used to be everybody up, we're going to be a 1/4% bank on it. Yeah, that's what we'll see. Now there's more people in the camp of it's going to be 0.5%
Mhm.
instead of 0.25.
Yeah.
And I've now been reading a couple of people now. Again, I will say I truly believe that 0.5 is hopeful, but but realistic, right? But the one I've heard now is there's a lot of people now saying we could even see 0.75 because there aren't enough meetings between now and spring, which is that's I guess the time frame they're using now to get our inflation up to 2%, right? There won't be enough meetings in between that time to achieve that goal in that rate drop. So
Yeah.
there's people arguing that we could see 0.75%. Now I think that's crazy, right? I think that's just, that's really, really, really hopeful people. I see a 0.5%, being hopeful but realistic. I'm still going to be the conservative person in me because that's who I am at 0.25%, right? I'm not going to fall into the overreaction Tuesday. That's what we'll call it. Overreaction Tuesday, right? But what do you think? Like, what are you hearing?
You know what? I have my personal opinion. I always tease economists and say the only thing economists agree on is nothing. I've said that a billion times on here. I always tease that human nature will always look for the answer that they want to hear. And people who are on this 3/4 of a percentage drop on prime rate, you're going to find economists that are going to agree with that. You're going to find economists agree that it's going to be a 0.5 percentage point. And you're going to find some economists that may agree it's going to be a 1/4 of a percentage point. So, but my gut tells me that we're going to see a 0.5 percentage off of our overnight lending rate tomorrow, which again has that direct impact on the prime. Keeping in mind that we're going to have another Bank of Canada meeting. I believe it's December 13th. If our inflation rate continues to hold at that 1.6 to that 2% target, I believe we're going to see another 0.5 point. It almost feels like everybody that was in that camp of a 1/4 of a percent off the prime rate has now jumped into that 0.5 percent camp, and the ones that were now at that 0.5 percent camp now are jumping into that 3/4 of a percent camp, right? So it seems
Right.
to be a dynamic shift. So I'm going to go from the camp that I was previously at a
At a
quarter
quarter?
of a percentage off the prime rate, and I'm going to basically dip my toes into that 0.5 percent.
Okay,
So
look at you,
let,
gutsy man.
let's see. It makes sense though. It
Yeah,
makes sense. Like if you
no, it
take
does.
a look at the numbers, if you take a look at just on how it's worked, and I'm a big believer in history to repeat itself. But if we take a look and we take a and see that our inflation rate as of today is 1.6%, and we see the last time that Canada had a 1.6%, which was back in 2021, our prime rate as 2.45%. It just makes sense that we are going to see that significant drop in the overnight lending rate. And I don't think it's going to be 3/4 of a percent. I think that's very aggressive. But I do believe it's going to be a 0.5 percent. And, come December and moving into 2025, it's really going to come down to where our inflation rate is at that time. And we've talked about this so many times is that I feel like I'm in a roller coaster ride. I feel that every time, every 3 months, we're having a different discussion as far as what's going on. So I guess that's why economists never really agree on anything because everything's always moving. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's it, man. So I really think there's a couple things now to watch out for tomorrow, of course. Well, there's not tomorrow, but tomorrow and over the coming weeks, of course, the rate cut, and then we're gonna want to take a look at the economy as well, because they're gonna also update its forecasts, right? So they'll give us a little bit of insight into what they believe is going to happen, which is going to directly, of course, tie into the housing market. So that is one thing now we're going to, as a realtor, right? And as everybody else, hopefully listening to this podcast, is going to be watching how the real estate market goes and starting to now really react to things a little bit more actively than passively knowing that things are slated to happen quicker than than
Yeah.
than anybody ever anticipated, right? Before we were just talking about knocking 1.25% off, right? Now we're talking about going doubling that to 2.5, right? That's how quick now everything's moving. And then inflation, right? That's the other key number to look out for because that's what's driving this whole conversation, right?
Well,
So
and keep in mind also, this is almost again a reverse conversation when our prime rate went up 8 times in
yeah,
11 months
yeah,
and that quickly, right?
yeah.
Because of our inflation rate. So, well, like I said, it's just crazy to me on how our dialogue changes within a 2 year period of time, right? So,
Insanity.
yeah.
Insanity. Lots to look out for though.
But at the end of the day, these lower interest rates are going to have an impact on the market. They're going, in my opinion, are going to stimulate the market. We've been in a cycle where it has been a seller's market,
Yep.
or sorry, not a seller's, sorry, a buyer's market, just
Okay.
because sales have been very slow. I think
We talked about it
a
we
10
talked
year
about it
low.
ad nauseum, Geoff. 30% over the past 10 years, or over 10 years, month after month after month. We've
Yeah.
dropped 30% in sales.
So this is a good thing. Well, this
Yeah,
is a good thing, and this is where I also say that housing is a circular industry, right? We have the
exactly.
highs, we have the lows, but it really is a circle. And I'm a firm believer the best asset in your life is going to be property. Sure, you're going to have the dips and the dives, but if you take a look, it always comes back. And whatever you
Exactly.
buy it for, at least here in British Columbia, is very rarely going to be what you sell it for, right?
No,
So
that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And when we get this whole election thing sorted out, then we'll we'll know a little bit more of what the landscape looks like in British Columbia as well. I'm gonna leave the rest of that alone though. So what do you got? What do we got on that?
that's a whole new podcast that
Oh
could be
yeah, I'm leaving that one
forever.
alone. My views on that is NSFW. That is for sure for the After Dark podcast.
That's for the red light
Yeah, that's
conversation.
yeah. My opinions on that one will not be expressed during the daytime made for children podcast. So what do we got going on, Jeff? What are we talking about today?
Well, yeah, what I want to talk about today is something that we've talked about before, and basically our reverse mortgages.
Yeah.
Again, we have an aging population, and I say that because I'm celebrating my 54th birthday today.
Congratulations, birthday boy. Happy birthday. Another great reason we're doing this pod today. And my birthday
So
present to you is me not singing.
I appreciate that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about reverse mortgages. I just wanted to scratch the surface as far as what they are, but more importantly, what you do with them if you no longer are living. You are no longer living in the property for a certain period of time. You are no longer maintaining the property details, be it insurance or just the condition of that property. Like what happens when you have to get out of a reverse mortgage because of death or something to that nature? So I wanted to recap on what is a reverse mortgage. And then I wanted to kind of get into how do you get out of a reverse mortgage and how that all works.
I think
So
that's the part I'm most excited for. Like, because that's the question. Like the it's always great to know the what, like, because and what when we talked about reverse mortgages the first time, we made that joke, right? About how they'd always been right portrayed as a negative thing. So it was really great to educate people that it is actually a positive tool. But now I love that we're getting a little bit of more of the meat of, okay, what does this mean once inheritance happens, or if you have to leave because of some certain circumstance? Because that's always the biggest question next, right?
and I'm glad you touched that. Reverse mortgages have had a nasty um, black eye to them,
Yeah,
largely because of how they were handled in the United States
right.
and what was happening with seniors being taken advantage of. And I think it's really, really important to understand here in Canada, there are two reverse mortgage providers. There's Equitable Bank and Home Equity Bank. And very, very important to understand that both of these financial institutions are regulated by Canada's governing bodies. So, and within these governing bodies, there is a whole set of guidelines that need to be adhered to. And it's a very, very safe product here in Canada, a very underutilized product with seniors here in Canada, but something that's actually becoming more utilized as people are becoming a little bit more educated in them. And also that one degree of separation where someone is 55 and they know somebody that has done a reverse mortgage and has had a great experience, and they know somebody that has had a reverse mortgage and has a great experience. And just that whole collateral effect is that people are just becoming more comfortable about them because they're getting more educated in them and more people are using them. So it's like that, I forget that shampoo commercial.
Head and Shoulders?
Really dated myself. I
Head
wasn't the Head and Shoulders.
Hurts?
I don't know what it was, but it started off with one person washing their head, and before you know it, at the end of the TV commercial, you had about 50 people
Oh,
washing their heads.
everybody was that Pert? I remember that too. We
Yeah.
don't have hair anymore, so that shows how old we are. But yeah, I think that was Pert though. I think that was Pert.
Yeah, or Head and Shoulders. I don't know what it was, but
Yeah.
it was something. So what I wanted to kind of do is let's talk about reverse mortgages. Let's kind of just say, hey, how old do you have to be to actually be able to apply for a reverse mortgage? Which is
I'm gonna guess 55.
55, right? So a reverse mortgage, the maximum loan to value that somebody is able to get is 55% loan to value. So let's break that into English. If you have a property that is worth $1 million, the maximum loan that you're going to get on that property is 55%, which would be 550,000. Now that's not to say that every reverse mortgage is going to go to 55% loan to value. That is all really dependent on your age. That's dependent on your gender. That's dependent on the type of property that you're trying to put a reverse mortgage on and where that property is located.
Right.
So, again, if you are 55 years old, putting a reverse mortgage on a condo, say out in Mission, British Columbia, you're not going to get a 55% loan to value on that. In comparison, if you are 75 years old, purchasing or putting a reverse mortgage on a detached home in the greater Vancouver area.
Yeah, in Ladner. Yeah, you're pretty good.
So always important to understand that the maximum loan to value that you're able to do on a reverse mortgage, if you're 55 and older, is 55%. But it really is all dependent on your age, dependent on your gender, depending on where that property is located, and depending on how old you are. And that's really kind of what a reverse mortgage is in a nutshell. So a lot of times, what the other things that we need to keep in mind in order for someone to apply for a reverse mortgage, you have to be 55 years and older. That's going to be Geoff Lee in 2025.
You go, baby.
I believe I'm 54. Like I'm
it's a new 40, baby. It's 44. 44.
The new 54 is the new 34. I think.
34.
So
okay, we'll say it's 34.
Go.
We'll go 34.
So again, you got to be 55. You have to live in that property at least 6 months out of the calendar year. And if you're able to do both of those things, you are going to be eligible to apply for a reverse mortgage. So what happens, Allister, if someone that's in a reverse mortgage that actually now has passed away?
That's what the biggest question is next, is like, okay, so now the person, unfortunately, time has come and they passed away. So what happens with the children? How did the children deal?
Well, again, number one, make sure that you have a will.
Of course, yeah.
Many of us on this pod, I can guarantee you, do not have a will.
Yeah.
So make sure that you have a will. Within that will, that property is going to be willed to, say, the children. And keep in mind, because that property has a reverse mortgage, the child or whoever is getting that property inherited to, I don't even know if that is a word. Is that a inherit?
Inherited.
Inherit? Inherited?
Inherited too.
Inherited to.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at Scrabble, but inherited to. Um, most likely they're not going to fit the reverse mortgage guidelines. Most likely they're not going to be
The age.
55.
More often they're not. They're not going to hit the age guideline of 55, right?
It's not going to be their primary
Residence, right?
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you have to do if you inherit a home that has a reverse mortgage? And it's quite simple. You have to basically either refinance that home in your name, and you got to pay off that reverse mortgage. Now, what happens if you're not able to refinance and do that? And remember, there's three lenders or three types of lenders here in Canada. If a bank or a credit union is not going to be able to do that, then you go to that subprime and B lending side. If they're not able to do that for whatever reason, then we go to that private lending side. But let's say none of these lenders are able to refinance this home. How are you going to pay back this reverse mortgage? Your other option again is to sell that home.
Sell it. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, say for whatever reason, maybe the home can't be sold. Maybe that home, what you owe on that home to what it's worth, you owe more on it than
what it's worth.
what it's worth. Because remember, with the reverse mortgage, you are deferring your mortgage payment until you either pass away,
yeah,
or you no longer live in that property for 6 months out of the calendar year, or you no longer have insurance on that property, title insurance,
yeah,
or that property becomes in a decimated state where the reverse mortgage lenders feel that it becomes unmarketable.
right. The value is being lost.
Right. So the one thing to understand too, with a reverse mortgage, you can live to the time of Moses, eat up all the equity in that reverse mortgage, and you're not going to be kicked out of the home. You're not going to be forced to sell. You're not going to be shoved out so the lender can get the money back. They actually will eat that loss and allow you to live out your dying years, or now you transition to a senior's home.
Terrible. Yeah.
Whatever that might look like. They will never kick you out if there is no equity left. But what happens if now that's you're inheriting that type of property? Obviously, you can't refinance it, right? Obviously, you could sell it, but maybe it's going to be a substantial loss. So the only third thing that you can do is basically sign a deed in lieu of foreclosure. And what that really means is that you're voluntarily signing the title of that property over to the bank.
To the bank. You're turning the property over to the bank.
Yeah. Right. And that's what people need to know and need to understand, is that what do people who are inheriting these types of property, what are they able to do to pay off the reverse mortgage, right? But again, we need to even dig this a little bit deeper. If people are in a reverse mortgage and they no longer are living in that property for 6 months out of the calendar year, they also have to pay that reverse mortgage back. Right. And sometimes reverse mortgages will go into a foreclosure. We were working on a file here just not that long ago on a property that was in a foreclosure that had a reverse mortgage on it. And people will say, well, how can you go into a foreclosure when you're deferring the mortgage payments until basically you pass on, or you're no longer living in that home for 6 months out of the calendar year? And in this particular situation, no one had passed away. It was their primary residence. But this particular situation ended up in a foreclosure because title insurance could no longer be put on the type of the home because of the condition that the home got itself into. Right. So as a result, what then has happened is that because no title insurance could be obtained, the mortgage provider foreclosed on the property.
Yeah.
Right. And in foreclosure, as we know, you're forced to sell in a period of time for that lender to get their money back.
Right. Yes.
So that is how it all works. But again, if you are or you're in a reverse mortgage and you are really going into your golden years, and I think the average lifespan is 82 years old. I think
82
that
now. We increased it by 10 years, I think it is. Yeah.
was it 72
It
before?
was 72 before. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I might have mentioned this. I did a whole life policy illustration, and I'm expected to live until 93.
Good for
So
you, man.
I don't know about that, but I'm going to go with it. But the most important thing is understand, and people know their health, right? Like understand the average age is 82 before someone passes away.
Yeah.
If you are in a reverse mortgage and you are getting into deep into your golden years, and again, maybe you're not 82, maybe you're 87, maybe you're 74, maybe you're 65. You know where your health is at. And the most important part is to understand and how to strategize yourself for your inheritors or your, again, I don't know if that's a word, or whoever is going to take on the inheritance or your estate, that you're communicating what needs to be done.
Yeah.
You have a will that's in place that is going to instruct on how that looks like and what that's going to do.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing that happens is that we all feel that we're going to live forever. We get into our golden years and we really don't even think about it anymore. And then all of a sudden something tragic happens, and all of a sudden you're not prepared to handle the estate. And one part of that estate could be a reverse mortgage that you're in.
Yeah, and I was going to kind of tag on to that. I worked with clients that were in a similar situation where they had obtained a property, it wasn't under a reverse mortgage, but they inherited a property that had a mortgage, but it was in a state of disrepair and being foreclosed upon. And we had to, of course, the market wasn't in a position, that it was going to do very well. So my advice to everybody out there is do your best to help your parents or whomever you're going to be inheriting the property from. Do your best to pop over, and when stuff needs to be taken care of, just give them a hand if they're not able to, because remember, that is going to be yours, right? At the end of the day, and you do want to make sure that it is in a position to that you're not left in, and that you're not left, I'm sorry, in a negative position.
Yeah, and we talked about power teams. Like everybody on this pod should have a power team. They should have a solicitor that they can go to. They should have an accountant that they can go to. They should have a mortgage broker that they can go to. They should have a realtor that they can go to. Right? So when there are times like this, again, it's about going to a solicitor, talking about a will. It's about going to a realtor. How much can this property sell for? As that time comes. It's to go to your broker to say, hey, if I need to refinance this property, am I able to do so?
What does that look like?
It's to go to the accountant to say, hey, if this passes on, what is my tax strategy in handling the gain of the sale? So again, everybody should be having these people in their power team. And to your point, if you do have a family member that is in a reverse mortgage and is in their golden years, and that's, again, so weird for me to sound because I'm going to be in my golden years next year, but it's our obligation to actually guide these people and getting them to where they need to be. So when that time comes, it's going to be one less thing that we have to do, or that they have to do, or that you have to take care of.
One less stress.
Because you feel that all in the forefront, right?
Exactly.
And again, it's all about that planning, all about that communication.
100%. Exactly. Well said, my man. Well said. Well, what is that it? That's all you got for us today?
That's it. That's it. So, our 30-second wrap up really is that if you are in a reverse mortgage, or anybody that is in a reverse mortgage, understand at some point that reverse mortgage is going to be paid or has to get paid. And that's going to be a result of you passing away, or whoever has that reverse mortgage passing away. It's going to be a transition that you're no longer living in that home for 6 months out of the calendar year. Maybe you're transitioning off to senior living. Maybe you're moving in with you and your family. It could be that that property, you haven't maintained that property to be in a marketable condition, right? Maybe you're going to be forced to pay back that reverse mortgage because it now becomes unmarketable. And just like the file that we just currently worked on, because of that unmarketability, because of the shape that that property now is in, you no longer are able to get insurance on that property. And not title insurance. I revert back. It's not the title insurance, it's the home insurance on that property. So if that property was going to get burned down or something was to happen to that property, there's a list of pays that get paid, in order for that insurance to take place. So if you can't get insurance on that property, again, that's going to also lead into a demand payment of that reverse mortgage. So that's it. That's our 30-second wrap.
Amazing.
And that's all I got.
That's my boy. Nice work. Sounds great. Well, before I tag us off, I'm going to say again, tomorrow is a big day for everybody. Rate cut day. So remember, watch out for that rate cut. Take a look, stay informed, stay educated, keep an eye out on the economy, keep an eye out in the inflation number that they come out with. And as always, keep an eye on the housing market because that's what all of this is affecting. So it could get wild really, really quick. But thank you all again for listening to episode number 32 of the Real Deal Pod with Allister and Geoff. We are, as always, so proud, so happy, and so grateful and humbled to be able to do this for all of you. Continue to love us, listen to us, share us, download us wherever you get your podcast material, Apple, Spotify, wherever else. My birthday boy, Geoff, I hope you have an amazing birthday. I hope you have a safe trip to New York. I want to hear all about it. I want to see the pictures, just none of you in jail. Please don't get arrested. Jail in New York, it's not a nice jail, man. I've watched a lot of Law and Order. It's not nice. Not nice.
Well, you know what? We're going to a Broadway show. I think we're going to Mystique. We're going to a Rangers game at MSG.
There it is.
We're going to the museum. It's going to be jam-packed. I hear you actually have to take a vacation once you get back from New York. So what do they say? It's a city that never sleeps.
Yeah. Have you never been?
I've never been.
Okay, you're gonna have a great time. I've got family out there, so I used to travel back and forth there when I was younger. I've had family that grew up in Brooklyn, so we are an amazing city. You're gonna love it, man. It's an amazing time, But you're gonna when you get back, you're gonna be I'm tired. So it's funny when you said we could put the pod off till I get back. I'm like, no, man, you're gonna need some sleep. You're gonna need a vacation. But you, my man, you enjoy it. Again, everybody, thank you for listening to us. We will be back here at our regular scheduled time next week, I believe, unless Geoff tells us he got arrested and he's going to have to postpone it. We will talk to all y'all later. Have an amazing week and an even better weekend. Chill later.
Ciao. Have a nice day.